The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Thank you for joining the Efficient Solar Market Partners of Northern California, the ESMP team, kickoff webinar for the Rooftop Solar Challenge powered by Sunshot, by the U.S. Department of Energy. I'd like to go over a few housekeeping rules. All attendees will be in listen mode only. If you are using your laptop, please make sure that everything, your mics, your volume are turned off. If you're using your phone for audio, please also make sure that you turn off your laptop microphone. We'll be monitoring the question line, so if you have any questions for the moderator or for the organizer, please post them on the question line. Any follow-up questions can be sent to David McFeely, and his contact information is below. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to David McFeely, who is the Director of Grants and Industry Solutions for SolarTech. David will be your MC today. Welcome, David, and good morning.
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you to everybody who's joined us today for this first kickoff webinar for SolarTech's team for the DOE Rooftop Challenge. My name is David McFeely. I'm the Director of Grants and Industry Solutions at SolarTech, and I'm pleased today to be hosting Danielle Murray of the San Francisco Department of Environment, who is the Renewable Energy Program Manager, who will speak to us about the streamlining activities for permitting, solar permitting that they've been doing with San Francisco, the City and County of San Francisco. So in a few minutes, we will be introducing Danielle and bringing on her presentation. But in the next 10 minutes, I would like to just go over what is SolarTech and what is this Rooftop Challenge. So we'll have a brief introduction by myself. Then we will, and I will just now start covering the Rooftop Challenge. Then I will turn the program over to Danielle, who will talk about San Francisco's efforts in streamlining solar permitting. And then we will have a Q&A session and a wrap-up. So first of all, who is SolarTech? Well, SolarTech is very basically and simply an industry association of a lot of the different industry players in the solar PV industry. You can see a lot of different familiar icons and names on the screen here. Our partners, our board of directors, as well as many of our members. So we're a membership-driven organization focused on removing the soft costs in the business processes of bringing solar PV to market. So things such as the interconnection process, streamlining and coming up with better practices for financing, permitting, inspection, installation, performance, understanding better performance metrics that make more sense to the consumer, and or better ways to evaluate performance in the field for finance bankability. And then we've recently finished an amazing grant in workforce development with the Secretary of State of the State of California. So we've been involved in workforce and a lot of the other areas that I just spoke to, developing best practices and guidelines for the industry to move faster and more effective. So how does that all work? What does that all look like? Well, the simple graphic here that you see on the screen illustrates how SolarTech views the business process, starting with customer acquisition on the far left, how to close a deal, pay for it, and then you go through a design and an approval process, build it, have it inspected, commissioning, and then start collecting revenue. All these different steps, which most of you who are integrators and have been in the business for any period of time are well familiar with, are all processes that can either run smoothly or inefficiently. And what SolarTech's goal is obviously to make them run smoothly, to grow the market 3 times faster through standardization and best practices. Strategically, we want to come up with initiatives, tools, and solutions that are best in class, post those actually in a website that looks very similar to this page here, so that just through a simple Dropbox, people can take a look at any particular step and pull down a tool that was either developed by SolarTech or through one of SolarTech's partner organizations that might make your business or your jurisdiction run more smoothly. So that's SolarTech in a nutshell: reducing soft costs, accelerating the business, reducing the cycle time to get from customer acquisition to actually revenue generation, whether that's a residential system or a commercial system or an industrial system. We're just waiting for the slide to change here before I start talking. There we go. So what is this rooftop challenge that we are speaking of? Well, the Department of Energy over the last year has announced what is called the Sunshot Program, very similar to back in the 60s where we had the Moonshot Program, to rally the country around moving solar in a faster direction towards achieving better grid integration, parity, both price and integration. So there's a variety of different programs that they have funded in solar PV R&D, in CSP development, in better system integration, and then the area that we're focused in, which is in soft costs, the DOE has put out several different awards in that area. One of them was the Rooftop Solar Challenge, which is a one-year program that was secured by 22 different teams across the nation. You can see on the map there, to try different things in their location to improve the soft costs or lower the soft costs, improve efficiency, and then to share those ideas and best practices with other teams and with other programs within the whole Sunshot community. So we are fortunately one of those teams, and I will talk about that more specifically in just a second. Again, just waiting for the screen to change here. There we go. So this is our team, led by SolarTech, myself, as you can see there, David McFeely, as the overall program director for the Efficient Solar Market Partners of Northern California. So this is our team made up of Danielle Murray of the City and County of San Francisco, Department of the Environment, Allison Healy of Solar Sonoma County, Carla Din, Director of East Bay Green Corridor, and then Ted Coe, the Director of Clean Coalition. So I'm going to go through very briefly what each one of these team participants has signed up to help us achieve, and then we will end on Danielle Murray, who will talk more in depth about what San Francisco is unveiling today. So let me take it from the bottom up and first talk about Clean Coalition. Clean Coalition is going to focus on coming up with a gold standard for an interconnection best practices manual, which you can see the acronym IXNBPM. But for all practical purposes, is to come up with a framework for a manual that does for interconnection what Solar ABCs has done for permitting. There's really no equivalent out there that people can pull from and leverage in the interconnection field that is kind of a uniform best practices for interconnection in the solar PV arena. So Clean Coalition has taken on that challenge and will be working collaboratively with a number of other different organizations, including some of the other 22 Rooftop Challenge teams, to first come up with a framework for what this document might look like, to then gather the data and build the documentation from different partner utilities on what they already have in the works that might be leverageable, and then to compile that all together and propose it out to the rest of the nation for adoption and ratification. So that's their challenge over the next 6 to 9 months. Next, I believe coming up is the East Bay Green Corridor. Oh, there's Ted Coe's contact information. So if you have an interest in this area, some expertise that you'd like to share with that particular project, be sure to reach out to Ted Coe directly at ted@clean-coalition.org. There we go. Okay. Carla Din of East Bay Green Corridor, which is a consortium of 9 East Bay jurisdictions in the greater San Francisco Bay Area out here in California. So their goal is to drive standardization and expedite solar permitting across all 9 East Bay jurisdictions, and to remove the barriers and increase the efficiency and reduce costs. Standardize and harmonize regional policies, drive local solar PV markets, and bring economic benefits to the region. And then just overall, the main focus of East Bay Green Corridor is to help each of these cities meet their climate action goals. So they'll be looking at streamlining the technical and process areas of solar permitting, to isolate the factors creating the lag time in solar permitting processing, and contribute to the national and statewide permitting guidebooks and reports. The state of California is just about to release a solar permitting guideline, and Carla's been working very closely with the state officials and other parties on that particular project. And then to support the technology transfer in advanced solar technologies to further reduce soft costs and drive innovations. So that's the East Bay Green Corridor led by Carla Din. I put up her contact information up there. So again, feel free to reach out to Carla if you have expertise or want to know more specifics about her part of the project. Okay, Solar Sonoma County is a consortium of jurisdictions and cities in the greater Sonoma County up in north of the Bay Area, led by Allison Healy, the Executive Director. So they'll be looking at both permitting, clean energy advocacy, and financing. So in permitting, they'll also be working on streamlining their permitting process within the whole county of Sonoma County. And Allison works very closely with both Danielle of San Francisco and Carla Din of East Bay Green Corridor. And the overall goal there is to also try to harmonize across all 3 areas. The idea there being that solar installers and those people working in that field work across multiple jurisdictions, and it just isn't really effective and efficient for them to have to go through a completely different process as they cross city boundaries. So we'll be working to harmonize across the region as well as to figure out how to streamline within a particular region. Solar Sonoma County will also be looking at what I think is really exciting, the clean energy advocacy, offering a free solar assessment to residential and commercial customers to give them kind of an initial benchmark to determine whether this is a topic they want to get more involved in, and then to also have a vetted list of vendors in a quality assurance program that consumers can feel very confident to turn to. So they're putting together a whole program along those lines that Allison will have an opportunity to speak towards later in July. And then in the area of financing, Solar Sonoma County is one of the few areas that has a county-wide PACE program. So they will be promoting that and documenting that and making that available to other jurisdictions outside of Sonoma County as a best practice that we will be disseminating throughout our other rooftop teams. So that's Solar Sonoma County in a nutshell. Again, Allison Healy. You see her contact information there in the lower left corner. Okay, Danielle Murray. We will be introducing her presentation in just a second. But again, the City and County of San Francisco is also one of our partners on this through the San Francisco Department of the Environment. And they will be working with the residents, small businesses, permitting authorities, and other government and private stakeholders to share best practices in the area of permitting and financing, and overall lower costs. One of the things that we're really excited about and that Danielle will be talking about in just a second is their streamlined permitting process that also will be going online. So we have an e-permitting component to this that she will be speaking to that's very exciting. But also they've got a number of other areas that they're working with. Group purchasing, solar community models. They're also doing a SunShares purchasing program for their employees to do group buys. One of the areas that I'm very excited about is the policy recommendations that they'll be putting together for virtual net metering and piloting that within the city of San Francisco, as well as coming up with policy recommendations for solar access to address the problems that may arise when somebody builds a new construction next to an existing solar installation and shades that installation. So there's a number of very exciting developments there within the city and county of San Francisco as one of our Rooftop Solar Challenge partners. So we're very excited about that. So without further ado, let me go ahead and change the slide here. There we go. A little slow here, thanks to the internet sometimes. So this, in summary, is your Rooftop Solar Challenge team for Northern California, the Efficient Solar Market Partners in Northern California. This is your team. Feel free to contact myself, David McFeely, or any one of my partner directors as a part of this team. Okay, I think it's that point in the program where we're going to switch over to Danielle here. Hopefully, Danielle, you're ready to go. Danielle Murray, again, of the City and County of San Francisco, the San Francisco Department of the Environment. Danielle is the Renewable Energy Program Manager, and she's going to talk about streamlined permitting, a streamlined permitting implementation for solar PV in the City and County of San Francisco. If you're ready, Danielle, I can then make you the presenter, and we're good to go.
Thanks, David.
All right. You're good to go.
All right. Let me get this on full screen. David, if you just want to mute yourself. So as David mentioned, San Francisco has been looking at streamlined permitting for solar PV for a number of years, and I'm just going to walk you all through the process we went through in the hope that some of the lessons we learned along the way and the practices we undertook might be helpful in your own jurisdictions. So, clicker working here. The process we went through has really taken almost a decade at this point. Not that it needs to take that long for other jurisdictions, but we went through really a multi-step process of refining our system and gathering feedback from stakeholders. So this started as early as 2002 when our office, the San Francisco Department of Environment, which is often shortened to SF Environment, held a number of consultations with local solar installers and customers. And that revealed that there were several barriers to permitting in San Francisco and to installing in general that included high costs of permits, long turnaround time due to the reviews required and documentation required, and inconsistency between inspectors and the actual application reviews. So in order to address that, the Department of Building Inspections worked with SF Environment to implement sort of the first round of what they called priority solar permitting. So in 2004, the very first step taken was to reduce the requirements for solar PV permits from structural or building permits and electrical to just electrical. That was a great first step, but in 2007 there was another review and found that things were still taking quite a long time and costs were still much higher than other jurisdictions. So again, our office, SF Environment, along with the Assessor Recorder's Office and Phil Ting, who's been a real solar champion here in San Francisco, he is our Assessor Recorder, convened the San Francisco Solar Task Force with a goal of streamlining solar permits. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. And finally, just this year, we have moved to online permitting, e-permitting for our small systems. So there's been a big step up this year and good things to come as that expands going forward. So the Solar Task Force, as I mentioned, this started in 2007 and actually continues to this day. It involves representatives from the local solar industry, environmental organizations, workforce development advocates, community stakeholders, including folks from our disadvantaged communities, as well as folks who were interested in installing solar on their own rooftops, local utilities, so PG&E in particular, and state energy agencies, and relevant city departments, so the Department of Environment, the Department of Building Inspections, the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, et cetera. So again, some of the key issues identified by the task force were the number of submissions and type of submissions required for the application and the time then to review those. So it, at that time, required a very detailed single-line electrical drawing with all of the PV equipment information, which actually was requested separately at that point, a detailed roof plan, structural attachment details, a photo of the site, and location for locations of proposed safety signage. And this is for any size system, from the most basic residential to a full-on commercial 100 kilowatt, 1 megawatt, whatever. And they found that on average for residential systems, it was costing about $2,500 more, I'm sorry, for all systems, $2,500 more to install solar in San Francisco than in neighboring San Rafael. So the bottom line was that San Francisco was not a competitive market for rooftop solar, and that was not where we wanted to be. San Francisco, of course, has very strong environmental leanings and desires to encourage renewable energy in the city and reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. So both politicians, the Department of Environment, and the community were not really happy with its finding, and so we decided to act on it. So the task force came together and started working towards these goals of streamlining documentations and looking at the actual permits that are required, streamlining the number of departments that need to review or ways to make that more efficient, ways to reduce the cost of pulling a permit, and of course maintaining safety and quality standards while improving that efficiency and turnaround time. So what we ended up with was this 2-page permit application that the task force drafted in coordination with the Department of Building Inspections. And essentially it shortened that entire rundown of documents I mentioned into this front and back page. And the main way that we were able to do this was to standardize some of the requirements and put the onus on contractors to basically check off that they have met the various requirements and put, of course, the legal onus on them that they're under penalty of perjury if they lie there. And depending on the system type, it reduced the amount of review required. So I know it's hard for everybody to see here, but those first 3 check boxes in the middle of the first page basically outline A is a system over 4 kilowatts or under. If it's over 4 kilowatts, you still need a DBI electrical review and to provide a 1-line drawing. The next one asks, is the roof area greater than 5,000 square feet, which is sort of a proxy for, is it a commercial system? And or do the panels cover more than 80% of the roof area? And if so, then fire department review is required because you're getting into some safety issues and you want to make sure there's access. And finally, does the roof have more than 1 layer on it? Is it a shingled roof, et cetera? And or does DBI have the attachment details on file already? And so if they do not, then DBI needs to provide structural review. So at the bottom, you have the sign off for those 3 reviews, when and if they're necessary. And then over on the second page, it goes through some of the general requirements, which are largely around the weight of the solar system. It can't be more than 8 pounds per square foot to go through this expedited permitting. It goes through the requirements for fire clearances, so setbacks along the edges of the roof, so firefighters have access to the ridge and all sides of the building. And verifying that the system is not a battery-based system, that there will be access to fire standpipes, that this is not going to be a new structure, it's not going to be a new building or addition to the building. And finally, that the system is attached to the roof in accordance with either manufacturer's instructions, which are pre-approved by DBI, and the task force worked to put all of the major manufacturer's instructions on file at DBI, so this didn't have to be done on a recurring basis for every single system. Same thing with fastening systems, so if a local installer, which there's really only about a dozen working in the city, regularly anyways, they were able to provide their fastening details to DBI in advance generically that could be applied across multiple installations. Or they simply had to meet these requirements that we had here in terms of the number of modules and the number of mounting points per module. So it's a fairly streamlined system, and for systems that are 4 kilowatts and under, which are largely residential or small commercial installations, both the task force and the DBI inspectors who were involved in this process felt that it maintained a high enough level of review to feel confident that public safety wasn't endangered, but also that reduced the requirements both on the side of the installers and homeowners and on the side of the building department. So it's saving money on both sides in terms of folks being able to come in, present just a 2-page application, and get their review done immediately there at the counter and handed back to them if it looks all right. And then, of course, having to pass the final inspection after installation. So our newest improvement is that we've moved towards online permitting. And so this was actually put in place over the last few years. The system was developed internally by both the Department of Building Inspection and our Department of Technology, so our IT team in-house. And it started just with electrical and plumbing permits. And since solar had this sort of specific 2-page application that was different from a generic electrical permit application, it wasn't able to be integrated immediately into this online system. But as of just a few months ago, they have created a new form for solar specifically, and the entire application for small systems up to 4 kilowatts can be applied for online. The form is online. You can pay for it online. You can print out your permit remotely once it's approved, and this still maintains the within 1 day turnover. Additionally, folks can track the status of those applications online, and the public can search a database online for permits, solar or otherwise, based on the permit number, the name of the applicant, the site address, and keywords such as solar, and can also browse a map of the city to see desired properties and what kind of work is going on there. So that's a useful tool generally for the public to be able to track what's going on in their neighborhoods or at their own property. And finally, next year, the Department of Building Inspection is actually going to do a complete overhaul of this online system. They are going to a more robust system provided by Acela to really enable better sharing amongst departments. So the current system is great for DBI internally, but whenever other departments such as planning and fire need to provide review, that still has to be done manually with printouts and that sort of thing, and there's no easy way for that communication to take place. So the new system will allow all of those departments to log on to review the same application, to have communication between those departments online and in the margins, in comments, et cetera, on those application forms. So that should speed up the review process and reduce the amount of paperwork flying back and forth between departments and the need for folks to make extra, for installers to make extra visits to DBI. So we think that's going to be a major improvement, and we'll have more details for that obviously in 2013 when it comes online. So just to give a quick overview of the differences before streamlining and after streamlining, we went from a paper permit application. It was submitted by mail or in person at the counter. It required wet stamp plans, electrical line drawings, site plans, roof plans, etc., and detailed structural mounting information, among other things. DBI reviewed the plans. They review for fire code violations, structural and electrical code requirements, and it could be returned the next day, later in the week, et cetera, however long it took to review that. And was then, it was up to the contractor to come in and pick up the permit. After streamlining, as of 2007, for systems up to 4 kilowatts, no plans are necessary other than that 2-page document we looked at. Installers sign off that they have met all of the requirements, and of course that has to prove out when the inspector gets there for the post-construction, for the post-construction inspection. And DBI reviews everything, all of the checks on that form. If, again, it is a larger system, it's covering more than 80% of the roof area, or it's on a difficult roof, let's call it, that requires structural review, DBI will manage that process of getting the reviews from their fire folks in-house, their structural engineers, et cetera, or reviewers. So for those systems under 4 kilowatts, the inspector, that we have a dedicated inspector who does all of these installations, all the solar installations, he reviews it over the counter and hands it right back to the installer, says it looks good, and call us when you're ready for the inspection. It's a low fee. I believe it's about $90 right now. And the only caveat is that you need to have a successful inspection afterwards. If you don't, there's a reinspection fee that's a bit steeper at about $180. And if you're trying to get the San Francisco Go Solar SF solar incentives, you need to have that successful inspection. So you need it generally to be in compliance with the law, but that's a real nice motivator to get people to get that inspection passed quickly. So similarly with e-permitting, the only things that are really changing are that we will be able to do all of that review online and remotely. So installers can put their application in from their office back home. They don't need to trudge down to downtown San Francisco, find parking, pay for parking, avoid tickets, which has been an issue for installers in the past, make multiple trips if they need to add something, or the inspector is on his lunch break or something like that. And they'll be able to get that right back over the internet. So we really think that's going to be a big improvement for everybody going forward. So a few lessons and best practices. You know, this task force met over the course of the year with themselves, and then bringing DBI in for consultation and feedback, and has been meeting ever since. And so we've learned a number of things through this process. The first and most important being that regular opportunities for broad input and collaboration are key. Having that broad representation from both the solar industry as well as community stakeholders and key officials really helped make sure that everybody was on board, that the policies were well designed, and that we weren't going to get to a point where we brought forward recommendations and DBI was completely opposed to it, or the solar industry said, well, this doesn't meet our needs. So that has been the number one thing that we would recommend to others. Start your own solar task force, bring in your industry, bring in your stakeholders. The second was making the economic case. As we saw, our permitting process was adding significant costs for San Francisco installers, and thus for San Francisco residents and businesses who wanted to install solar. So we had a real incentive and mandate from our city councilors to address that and to make San Francisco competitive, to reduce these costs for our homeowners, and we were able to do that. Creating specific requests and maintaining a good working relationship with the permitting authorities, our DBI. That was crucial. As everybody knows, our cities are in a difficult spot budget-wise, and a lot of us have had our buildings departments staff reduced and budgets reduced, and so it was really important to make sure that we were providing targeted recommendations that had been vetted, that we were confident in, and that we were confident would meet the Department of Building Inspection's needs. Bringing to those recommendations to DBI in a concise manner, professional manner, and limit both the demands on the staff to review our recommendations at that time, but also, of course, to reduce demands on their staff going forward through this new streamlined permitting process, which, of course, required balancing speed and safety. DBI is there to protect public safety, and, of course, we don't want to be streamlining to the extent that we're no longer putting protections in place and making sure that we have good installations going on. So while we want to limit our asks of the department, we do want to make sure that they're involved in the process and providing feedback, and we're making sure that they are comfortable with those changes, that we're following state code and best practices for electrical safety and structural safety. Having that good relationship has also been crucial going forward, and we continue to work with DBI and make sure that things are going smoothly and that we're not having cases of folks going out in the field for inspections and finding ongoing issues. And so there's been a nice feedback loop through that process. Enabling tracking and data management has been really great with electronic permitting, and we hope to see more going forward. This is it's great for internal use, for us to track the number of installations, the speed, to provide metrics for our own city government. But it's also going to be useful from an environmental perspective and tracking our greenhouse gas emissions reductions and meeting our renewable energy goals here in the city. So this is going to be particularly important as PG&E's CSI, or the state CSI program, goes away, and we no longer receive interconnection data from PG&E through the CSI program. So we're looking forward to using this as our main data collection process for our solar market development in the city. And we were also able to use this new system to create an incentive to promote compliance with the inspection process and safe installations. And that was primarily, again, through coordination with our Go Solar SF rebate program. So folks who wanted to get that rebate had to, of course, pass inspection and do it quickly, so you're not keeping your homeowners on the hook for extra thousands of dollars. So we had a nice tie-in there that, of course, not every jurisdiction will have, but it's been a nice carrot for us. And, of course, making sure that you have a reinspection fee that covers the cost, of course, for your department to do that reinspection, and also provides a bit of a stick so that folks are really trying to avoid reinspection, not just for that one-time cost, but they have to be on site, and nobody wants to be making multiple trips back to a site if they don't need to. So that's the quick overview, and I'm happy to open it up to questions. I know I went through that quite quickly, but I will open it up, I think, to David to moderate some Q&A.
Thank you, Danielle. That was really exciting and very interesting. We have about 3 questions so far. I'm getting a message from Wendy here. But since I'm the moderator, I'm going to take the prerogative to ask a few questions first before we take questions from the audience, because I think we've got plenty of time here. So I guess the first question I'd like to see if you have any numbers on at this point in time, Danielle, is what's been the integrator response to this, and kind of coupled with that, I think it'd be kind of an interesting metric if you happen to know off the top of your head how many different integrator firms do business in the county of San Francisco.
I think we have roughly about a dozen folks working in the city of San Francisco, solar installers and integrators. And a lot of our interaction with them comes through both the task force as well as our Go Solar SF rebate program, which has a installer certification or eligibility process. So we keep in quite close communication around that. And one of the main purposes of the task force at this point is to keep getting ongoing feedback on the rebate program as well as the permitting and other market development efforts such as Sunshot. So we've had great feedback from those installers, and I think they have really benefited from taking part in the task force, and we've benefited from having them involved. It's, of course, a big ask to ask all these busy individuals to come in and provide their expertise and feedback on a monthly basis, which is what it was for a while, for a couple hours. And we really appreciate that, and I think they have benefited in turn, though, from these reduced time costs in terms of installing, permitting applications and inspections. And all the feedback I've received has been positive. we continue to address issues such as new installers coming into the market who are less familiar with the streamlined process or with the requirements of it, and trying to make sure that we're continuing to ensure safety as the market grows and as we have folks who haven't been with this process for as long, and making sure we bring them on board and get them engaged. But overall, it's been very positive.
Yeah, because there's a couple of three things that I picked up here that I think are really interesting and unique about your program. So I'm just going to kind of run through them real quickly here, and then if you want to comment a little bit more on each one in particular as to how you see it either as a unique part of the program or how it might actually be a benefit to the installer or to the city in some way, shape, or form. So the first thing is obviously the size, the 4 kW limit. You might want to talk about how you came about with that number and what it really means in reality. The other thing that I find very intriguing is that you've put a lot of the burden of proof onto the installer to validate that they have met all these different requirements in the application. And then along with that, you've added some obvious carrots and sticks, some penalties and incentives to ensure compliance. And then I think the third thing that you might correct me if I've got it wrong here, but I either heard in your presentation earlier or I read previously somewhere else that you have some pre-approved structural components that also help streamline things if that particular component is called out in the application, that's how you're going to be structurally connecting to the roofing system, that there's no further documentation needed because the city already has everything on file. So those all seem to be fairly interesting and unique aspects to how you're approaching this particular streamlining model. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more towards each one of those.
Yeah, so the size, the 4 kilowatts, was determined to be basically the cutoff between residential and most commercial systems. So, of course, here in San Francisco, we have fairly small houses. We're quite dense, so it's rare to see a system more than 4 kilowatts going onto a residential install here. And that was also based on some, I believe, inverter basics, and those size systems were staying in the smaller inverters. So there's been discussion more recently of increasing that size to closer to 10 kilowatts in line with the solar ABCs. But at this time, everybody at the table, including DBI and the solar installers and integrators, have said we're totally happy with the 4 kilowatts. We think that over that there is good reason for closer inspection and review by DBI and by fire. So we're sticking with 4 kilowatts for now. It's been working for us in San Francisco. It may not be the appropriate size for other cities, but and this also came out before the solar ABCs. So folks who are putting this into place now might prefer to do it in line with the ABCs, but because of our roof sizes, this has just been working out for us fine. We do put a lot of, I guess, legal burden on the installers in terms of checking those boxes. Luckily, it takes less paperwork burden, so we think that's a fair trade-off. Again, the key there is that they need to actually install to what they're saying, and so when you get on site, that installation needs to match what was laid out in the application. And this, again, is an area where it's been working really well for these installers who've been working in the area for a long time and who've been in the industry for a long time. It's something we need to keep an eye on as new folks come into it, and if we keep seeing repeated failed inspections, that might be a flag that we need to reconsider this and or work more closely with those new installers. But we found that they, you know, they're basically saying, yes, we've installed to code. We have provided the required fire access. This is within some very basic criteria, including, you know, the weight and connection points on the roof, and that therefore there's very little safety concern to the city, to those homeowners, and to the installers, and that everybody feels like it should be able to go through pretty quickly without additional review. It's standard. We're moving towards solar systems at this size that are very standardized, and they really don't need these intense engineering reviews every single time that one of those applications goes through. And the sticks and carrots are crucial to that, to making sure that people are following the rules and complying with inspections in a timely manner. And finally, you mentioned the pre-approved structural plans or attachment plans. And so that was one of the things those installers taking part in the task force were able to work with DBI on. I should have said there was really initially a steep learning curve with DBI in terms of getting them comfortable with solar technology in the first place. And in conjunction with this, we actually did code official training and inspector training, so these folks were more comfortable with what the heck this new technology is in the first place, and what are the hazards of it, and what should they be concerned with, what things that maybe raise flags initially they don't need to be spending as much time and effort looking into. So one of those points was the connections with the roof, and so the folks on the task force were able to provide standardized mounting information and plans to DBI that they then kept on file, and those installers were then able to reference whenever they put in an application that was using those plans. And some of those are generic for different solar manufacturers, so it's not just that one installer who could use them, but different installers who are all using the same manufacturer's mounting instructions. So that both gave DBI more comfort in the process and reduced the burden on those installers on an individual application basis. And we continue to provide plans to DBI as their new systems put in place or proposed. So it goes through the initial review by DBI and their engineers, but then it just gets kept on file for reference. So that's worked out really well for us.
Great, thank you. And just for clarity, DBI is your Department of Building Inspection, correct?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And since you still have control over the slide deck, I'm going to ask you to back up a couple of slides to the table that you had. And I want to ask you a couple of questions about the e-permitting. And I'll go ahead and put those questions out there while you're there. You go. Okay. So this is a very exciting table. And two questions. One is on the e-permitting. So obviously, if somebody's submitting a two-page permit across the counter and it's being reviewed there at the counter, signed off, and handed back to them, that's pretty straightforward. In the e-permitting, I think in reading the documentation that you provided me in preparation for this webinar, I didn't see how the integrator was notified of the permit being approved when they apply online. So I'm wondering if you could speak to that for a few seconds.
I believe that they get an email ping back that it's been approved, and they can, of course, log on and see the status of their permits, but I'm not 100% sure.
So yeah, those would
likely
be
both an email and just being able to check in online.
So there is a status checking capability within the tool as it's currently developed, where they would be. Is there a commitment on a cycle time overall? Like they'll probably expect an approval or a denial within 24 hours?
Yeah, from what I understand, I don't know that they actually say 24 hours, but again, it's the same. As soon as it comes in, the inspector looks at it. It actually goes to the front of the queue. And our electrical inspector looks it over and approves it immediately. So obviously, somebody still needs to put their eyes on it. So it's not just that you enter the application and it's automatically approved, but it should be returned within the day and possibly within the hour.
Great. And one of the other things that you mentioned that I think you made some good points on, and I'd like to see if you could elaborate a little bit more, is the data tracking portion of this. That's an area that's kind of near and dear to my heart, and I think it's the data tracking overall for the CSI program with the CSI database and the utility interconnection data has been very helpful to the industry in being able to monitor the growth and success of the industry. Is this data tracking something that's currently built into the existing online permitting application tool, or is this what you envision next year when you roll out to a new tool implementation?
So we have a fairly basic tracking system right now. We can pull a report for all of them that are solar, so we can know the quantity of them, and then you can pull up all the details you want out of those, but it's still fairly manual. With the new program, we're hoping that will be much more automated, that DBAI will be able to just press a button and pull a report on all of the solar PV installations, all of the solar water heating installations separately, and have that report provide a number of metrics, including installed capacity, number of installations, where they are in the city by zip code, for example, inverter capacity, all of those things that we have been getting from CSI that we presumably will not be getting after the program ends. So yeah, it's going to be crucial for us in terms of tracking those installations. Currently, we also have that data through our rebate program, but when and if that program goes away in a few years, this will be our real only sense of installation activity in the city.
Okay, I just have one more question, and I'm getting the kind of the high sign from Wendy that we should probably start answering questions that are coming in on the chat line. So let me just ask my final question here, related to the data gathering tracking that we were just talking about. Is that information going to be open to the public in some way? Like, would a third party be able to come in and request that kind of data if they were trying to compile statistics statewide from similar types of databases statewide?
Yeah, of course. Being the city, all data is public, all information is public. I think the real question is how streamlined will that process be? Currently, you can go on, like I said, and you can search by any address, by keyword, all of that. So you could put in the keyword solar, and up will pop all of the solar installations within the time frame you're searching. But getting that into a format that's really useful to Solar Tech or other third parties is probably the next step, and I think that's something we would want to work with DBI on through the Solar Task Force once they have that new permitting system in place.
Well, I'll be following up with you on that. So in the meantime, let's turn the microphone, so to speak, over to Wendy. And Wendy, if you would read off a couple of questions on the chat line, we'll see if we can answer those today.
Certainly, I'd be happy to. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. You mentioned the two-page permit application, but a question just came in and asked, is the two-page permit application included in the PV submittal requirements?
I don't think I understand if that is the submittal requirement, the two-page application.
Okay. That's what my understanding was as well. I think we just needed the audience just needed clarification.
Gotcha. Yeah, so that is currently, again, if you're under 4 kilowatts and you meet these requirements around the size, the amount of roof covered, the type of roof material, then all you need is that two-page application. If you're a larger, over 4 kilowatt system, over 5,000 square foot roof, et cetera, those things I went through, then you do have to provide extra documentation, including the single line drawing for the over 4 kilowatt systems and other structural information as requested by DBI for depending on the roof that you're putting it on for the ones who aren't within those standards outlined on the two-page application.
Great. I'm not quite sure if you can answer this, but many of us who are looking at, who look at software programs and moving online are always interested to know what is the cost of switching to an online program. And I'm not sure if you can share or give an approximation of how much does it cost to switch over to an online permitting application, and primarily the software costs.
Yeah, so from what I understand, the new contract with Acela is for $4.5 million, and that will be for all of the permitting, so that's not, of course, specific to solar. I couldn't tell you more of the breakdown within that, but that's a general range. Hopefully that's helpful to folks.
Great. Thanks, Danielle, again. With this new process, would you require additional training for the inspectors since they don't really have a detailed permit pack to deal with?
Under this new streamlined or with the e-permitting?
Underneath this new streamlined.
Yeah, so we did do training with those officials, with the inspectors, and we found that it was really important to do that training with people that they that were in their own profession, that they respected. And so we did training with officials from the South Bay, fire officials from the South Bay who are very knowledgeable in this area, and with Bill Brooks from who's a well-known engineer in the solar industry. And they really enjoyed working with somebody who spoke their language, basically, who understood what their concerns were, and were able to also be experts in the solar field and give them the assurances they needed and the actual technical information they needed. So the first step was really getting them comfortable with the technology and safety elements of the installation. You know, in large part, it's not that different than any other electrical installation or piece of equipment mounted on a roof. So it's just adding that extra level of comfort after bringing in this newfangled photovoltaic thing, which sounds scary and new at first, but really is not too far outside of what they've already been looking at. And then in terms of just getting them comfortable with this new permitting process and application form, again, they were involved with drafting it. The Solar Task Force did a lot of the legwork so that DBI staff wouldn't have to take all of that time out of their busy schedules. But DBI was actively involved with that, and of course had the final sign-off on it. So and had discussions with the task force about why this but not this, and is this acceptable, etc. So that really built confidence on both sides and opened up a nice avenue for having ongoing communications that continues to this day. So there's definitely a comfort building exercise involved there. There's need for training new inspectors as they come on, and luckily we now have, in particular here in San Francisco, one inspector who's been fantastic and who has become our solar guru in DBI, who can provide his insight to other DBI staff as necessary. I would caution, of course, you don't want to have all of your institutional knowledge stored in one person, but having that real expert on staff at this point is a real help to everybody involved.
Great. Are there any plans to do any form of training for existing and new contractors that are coming on board, meaning the integrators?
We don't have any training planned right now. Not at the moment, but again, we as soon as we find out about a new contractor working in the area, we encourage them to come to the task force meetings so that they can get brought up to date on what's going on, what the permit process looks like, et cetera. And we are always happy to do one-off walkthroughs through the process. But again, if we do see recurring issues, we will revisit the idea of doing additional training or changing requirements or putting in place some more carrots and sticks to ensure that folks know what the requirements are and are able to meet them.
Okay, great, fantastic. We have about a minute left until the program concludes, and we've got a flurry of questions that are coming through. So for those in the audience, we'll try to answer. We'll be able to probably get to one or two more questions, but after that, we will pose the questions again to our panelists and make sure that we get that posted to our website so you have the information for our Q&A.
Of course, we're happy to answer questions and respond by email after the webinar.
Absolutely. Danielle, yes.
If you could pass presenter control back to me, I will key up the slides for the final conclusion.
Sure.
Certainly. Okay. Those of us who know about the state of California soon to be publishing their recommendations on streamlined, standardized permitting process. We're all anxiously waiting to see that document. With that said, does San Francisco compare its streamlined permitting process to the soon-to-be released published recommendation?
So we actually weren't a part of that panel that worked on it. So unfortunately, I haven't seen the guidelines yet. But of course, as soon as they're released, we'll be looking forward to comparing the two and seeing if there are things that we should be implementing that the state has recommended, or if they're perfectly aligned. So we will be keeping an eye out for that as well as the rest of you are.
Great. One of our attendees said that 4 kW is a good number. What are you thinking about ground-mounted system as commercial parking social structures in San Francisco? As commercial parking solar structures in San Francisco?
We love all solar, ground-mounted or rooftop. You know, the focus for us has been on rooftop just because that's largely what we have. We don't have a ton of open space or even large parking lots, but we do have some. And for example, through our Solar at Work program this year, we did look at and encourage shade structures in parking lots. So we're completely open to them. They, of course, don't fall under this streamlined 2-page permit, but because they're separate structures and because they are larger than 4 kilowatts, generally speaking. So we completely support them and would love to see more of them in the city. They just have to go through a couple extra reviews, which are not onerous, but require more than the 2-page application.
Okay, and I think we have enough time for maybe one more question. Let me see if I can find one that's pretty quick.
Sounds
Sorry,
like
it's taking me a little longer. One of our audiences has emphasized that the biggest problem in PV systems efficiency is the loss. Is any organization addressing this inverter efficiency issue? And I'm not sure if San Francisco has an answer to that. But
so the biggest barrier is the law?
The loss of efficiency.
Loss. So we, aren't directly addressing inverter efficiency, but are watching improvements in microinverters and are going to be looking at that as it rolls out and see if there are ways that we need to update our permitting process to deal with microinverters to make this whole process even more streamlined, perhaps. But we stay out of the technical design end of things for the most part.
Okay, great. Well, again, that concludes our Q&A. And audience, we will definitely address your questions after our session, and we will get the Q&A posted to our site and to our panelists as quickly as possible. Again, after our session, I'd like to thank David McFeely, Director of Grants and Industry Solution with SolarTech, and again, Daniel Murray, Renewable Energy Program Manager with the City and County of San Francisco Department of Environment. We're just waiting for, there we go. Stay tuned for some up-and-coming webinars that will be this month as well as next month. This month on June 20th, we will be having in the presentation on interconnection best practices, something very near and dear to my heart, guide, updates, and comments from Clean Coalition. On July 11th, we will hear updates from Solar Sonoma County, specific topics to be determined, and on July 25th, East Bay Green Corridor will give an update on their activities and progress. Again, just thank you. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge and give special acknowledgement and thanks to the Department of Energy Sunshot Program and all of the many individuals, both directly in and outside of Sunshot, working to streamline this industry and ensure a viable environment for solar PV. And please join SolarTech at our Performance Symposium on July 9th at Intersolar San Francisco, capitalizing solar as an asset class for the mass market. Stay connected to SolarTech through www.solartech.org and watch for future information and webinar offerings. Lastly, at 11 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, there will be a webinar presented by ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, through the Sunshot Solar Outreach Partnership, improving the efficiency of the rooftop solar permitting process. If you'd like to join that webinar, presented on the screen is the registration link. So I welcome all of you to partake in that webinar as well. ICLEI is also a partner of SolarTech underneath our Solar 3.0 program. This webinar will focus on the procedural components of the permitting process and not the technical standards to give participants various strategies that can be used in their own communities.
That basically concludes it, Wendy. I'll leave this screen up for those who want to write down the webinar URL.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. We hope the information that was provided to you was helpful, insightful, enlightening, and we look forward to working with all of you to help reduce the balance of system soft costs for PV solar system projects, driving adoption through best practices, best-in-class, and standardization. At this time, our webinar for today has concluded. Thank you very much. Oh, last but not least, we will definitely have today's slide posted to our website as well. Thank you again, and you all have a wonderful day.